Hey folks, how you doing? Dave McRae here. It's Friday morning, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, February the 7th, 2020. The 92nd Academy Awards are this Sunday. Who gives a fuck? I don't. I kind of give a fuck. It's all, I think... Talking about the Academy Awards can go one of 7,521 ways. We can talk about the Academy Awards from a hot button political perspective. There's not enough diversity! Come on, man! There's too many white people! We can talk about it from that perspective. We can talk about it from the perspective of, oh, come on, why is it that the best director didn't direct the best picture? That doesn't make any sense. You got the best picture. That's the best. You're saying it's the best, but yet I don't get it. I don't get it. You can talk about it from that perspective. You can talk about how, oh, fuck awards, man. Who gives a shit about awards? Nobody cares. It's self-congratulatory. You're just patting yourself on the back. Fucking self-indulgent pieces of shit. You know what I'm saying? You can talk about it from that perspective. You can talk about it from the perspective of snubs. The guy got snubbed. Did you hear that? He got snubbed. What's going on? I don't know. I thought for sure he was a shoo-in. Yeah, but what about her? She should have been in there. I mean, come on. You can talk about it from the, the snubbing. You can talk about it from the perspective of... maybe the, all the directors are men. How come there's not a female director in there? What's going on? It makes no fucking sense. Put a woman in there, for Christ's sakes. You got too many men. And they're all white. Well, except for the Asian guy. But still, come on. So many perspectives. And listen, I'm not saying that some of those things are not important. I just, in a world that, in the kind of world we live in today, if you can't fucking laugh at yourself, and if you can't laugh at the absurdity of life sometimes, you're going to die, man. You're going to die. I mean, the world is crazy. It's crazy right now. It is. It's a crazy fucking world. There's so much. It's just, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. I mean, it's at the grocery store. Beep, beep, beep. Oh, come on, you fucking say, you're too slow. You're too slow. It's everywhere, man. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. The Oscars. The Oscars are this Sunday. The Oscars are this Sunday. That's right. I'm a Buffalo Sabres fan. They had a great month of November, or October, I should say. But they're sucking again. What a shock. But been a Buffalo Sabres fan for, the better part of probably about at least 35, 36 years. So I ain't jumping ship yet. So, there's so many different perspectives we could talk. And I have no doubt that people in the chat room or people who are going to be watching after the fact, I have no doubt they would love it if I went into it. There's too many whites. There's not enough. There's too many men. They would love it because that's what we. And again, I'm not saying that isn't important, but for God's sakes, man, sometimes I just laugh. Not because, and I know. Well, you're just a white guy. You can do that. No, that's not. I'm. Okay. All right. No, I'm laughing because it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And if I spent my days, then I would be dead tomorrow. I just would be dead. And sometimes you just have to laugh. You got to take a breath. You got to calm down, and you just got to be like, okay. You know what I'm saying? So what's the perspective that I want to talk about the Oscars from? Well, let's just go back and pretend it's 1986. And let's just talk about who we think's going to win. let's just do that. Might be kind of fun, calm, cool, collected, relaxed. Okay? Let's do that.
But you can't do it without... Shut up! Shut up!
All right, here we go. Okay, so yeah, I want to talk about who I think is going to win and give my predictions of who I think is going to win. So, let's just talk about that, shall we? Let's just do that.
Aw, man!
That's what we're going to do.
Fuck you, man. Come on.
Do I have it here? I think I have it here. Is this it?
Fuck you, man. Come on.
There it is. There it is right there. That's what he's saying. No, we're just talking about it normally.
Fuck you, man. Come on.
Well, that's too bad. Okay. So let's start with Best Picture. Okay, so these are the movies nominated for Best Picture. The 92nd Academy Awards are this Sunday night. And the movies nominated for Best Picture. Well, first of all, actually, before I get into that, let me just tell you, there is something I do want to say because not a lot of people know this. Very brief now, a brief rundown of sort of how the voting works. Okay, the Academy is made up of about 8,000 people. All right. Now you can, if you work in the industry, you can obviously submit yourself to be part of the voting body of the Academy. It has to go through an approval stage and you have to be approved and you have to have a certain set of criteria to be approved. It's not like anybody can just be like, hey man, can I be part of the Academy? Yeah, sure, Bob, come on in. It doesn't work like that. So you have to have a certain level of cred in order to be approved, which makes sense. That makes sense, people. I think that's probably appropriate. So there's about 8,000 people, give or take, and obviously they're trying to include more diversity in there and yada, yada, yada. Okay, great. That's great. Great. Awesome. Okay, cool. But how it is voted on essentially is you have different branches of the Academy, right? So you have there's the director's branch, there's the actor's branch, the writers, the producers, the set designers, and everybody who is all the set designers who are able to vote, all vote on the nominees in terms of for set design. So if I was an actor who was part of the Academy, I couldn't vote on who I think should be nominated for Best Picture. Now, I believe I can vote on who I think should win Best Picture. I believe I can do that. And I think excuse me. I think, wait a minute. It's been a while since I've looked this up. I think everybody can vote on who they think should be Best Picture. I can vote on who I can't vote on who I think should win Best Director. But I can, on who I think should be nominated, for Best Director. But I can vote on, once the nominees are out, I believe as an actor, I can vote on who I think should win. I think that's how it goes. Anyways, how the nominees are figured out, essentially, is all the directors who are part of the Academy vote on who they think should be nominated for Best Director. All the writers vote for the writers, all the set designers vote for the set designers, and so on, and the actors, so on and so forth, and that's how it goes. I think Best Picture is the only one that everybody can vote for. So it's not as black and white as you. It's more black and white than you might think, but it's not as black and white as you might think, if that makes sense, right? It's not like there's 8,000 people voting for everything, voting for all the nominees. I could just, I want to do that. What the fuck? No. It's not like that. So the actors vote for who they think should be nominated for Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, etc. And then I think once the nominees are all out, I think everybody can vote for who they want to win in each category. I think that's how it works. I'm a little rusty on this, but at the very least, that's the gist ballpark. So just keep that in mind, okay? But anyway, so here we are. So here are the nominees for Best Picture, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, we have 1917, we have Ford v. Ferrari, we have Joker, we have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Parasite. Oh man, if you guys haven't seen Parasite, man, was that good? Oh my God, that was good. I watched it the other night with my girlfriend. We're sitting on the couch. We are locked in. It was fantastic. It's a foreign film, subtitled. So for those of you that fuck subtitles. If you don't like subtitles, that's okay. Dave, I don't like that you made fun of me that way. Well, that's okay. Anyway. I didn't like subtitles years ago either. Because I don't like reading. I like watching a movie. I don't like reading while I'm watching a movie. It seems counterintuitive. But as I've gotten older over the years, I've been able to sort of find a rhythm. It always takes me probably about 15, 20 minutes anytime I watch a movie that's subtitled to get into the groove and be able to kind of bounce back and forth and find a rhythm between reading and watching, right? And finding a pace that I'm reading at, because I have to read fairly fast, right? Because the subtitles are not on for very long, depending on how long the text is. And depending on how long or how fast the action is moving, they may have to show it fairly fast and all that kind of jazz, right? So it does take a bit of practice to find your rhythm in order to be able to watch a movie with subtitles. But once you find that rhythm, there's some great movies out there. And Parasite is one of those movies. If you guys have not seen Parasite, my God, one of the best movies of the year, 100%. Fantastic film. So Parasite, yes, The Irishman, Little Women, Jojo Rabbit, and Marriage Story. So who do I think is going to win Best Picture? Well, all of this is really just going on what I sort of feel, sort of what I'm hearing buzz in terms of the climate and things like that. Now, there's always black horses. Is it black horses? No, dark. Is it a dark? What's the hell's the phrase? I'm brain farting here. Anyway, there's always that lone wolf, so to speak, that comes up and kind of steals the show, right? That can happen. But I think everybody is sort of pointing to, and I would have to agree because of the buzz, 1917. Now, I haven't seen 1917. Dark Horse. Thank you, Frank. That's it. Black Horse, Dark Horse. I would say that is more than likely the front runner. I think 1917 is going to win Best Picture. But I wouldn't be surprised somehow, just because of the climate, I wouldn't be surprised if Jojo Rabbit or Parasite took it. I don't think The Irishman's going to take it. I don't think Little Women's going to take it. I don't think Marriage Story's going to take it. I don't think Joker's going to take it. I don't think Ford v. Ferrari's going to take it. And I don't think Tarantino's going to get his Best Picture here. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think if you were a betting person, you bet 1917, Parasite, or Jojo Rabbit. I just think those are sort of the ones. But, there could be that dark horse that comes up. All of a sudden you could hear, Ford v. Ferrari. It's like, really? Oh, wow. Okay. It's a good movie, but like, really? Oh, holy shit, right? And that's everybody. Everybody in the Academy gets to vote for Best Picture. The winner of Best Picture. At the very least. Okay, so Best Actor. We have Jonathan Pryce for The Two Popes, Adam Driver, Antonio Banderas, Joaquin Phoenix. I love Joaquin Phoenix. Leonardo DiCaprio. I think Phoenix is going to take it. I think this is a foregone conclusion. I think the momentum with Phoenix is just too strong, and I think he's going to take it. I think Joaquin Phoenix is going to take it. If Joaquin Phoenix did not take it, then I think it would probably go to either Adam Driver or Jonathan Pryce. I think is probably, I don't think it's going to go to either of them. I really don't. I think it's going to go to Joaquin. I really do. I think it's a foregone conclusion that that's going to happen. But if it didn't, I'm leaning towards Price or Driver. I don't think it's going to go to Banderas, and I don't think it's going to go to DiCaprio. I don't think it will. Best Supporting Actor, Anthony Hopkins, Brad Pitt, Joe Pesci, Al Pacino, and Tom Hanks. This actually is a tough one. I was looking over this and I was thinking to myself, this is actually kind of tough because, I know Brad Pitt won the Golden Globe, but that doesn't necessarily mean, it's different bodies that are voting here, right? It doesn't mean that he's going to win, the Best Supporting Actor for the Oscars. Now it can. I mean, there are examples of people who win the Golden Globe and also win the Oscar. I mean, that has happened. But there are what am I, Mike Tyson? There are also a lot of other examples of people who win the Golden Globe but don't win the Oscar, right? I mean, Sylvester Stallone won the Golden Globe for, Creed, but didn't win the Oscar, and there's tons of examples like that. Different voting bodies, different people. So, this is a tough one. This is a really tough one. If it goes to Brad Pitt, I'll be a little disappointed. I don't not like Brad Pitt. I like Brad Pitt, right? There's always a little room for Pitt. But I don't think his performance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was anything spectacular. I don't think there was anything. I think DiCaprio's performance, he's great at everything. Brad Pitt was basically playing a 1969 version of himself. It probably wasn't that difficult or a stretch for him to do that. I think what garnered him his Golden Globe and was he good in the movie? Yes, he was good in the movie. Yeah, he was good. I'm not saying he wasn't good.
Dave thinks he wasn't good.
No, I'm not saying that. Sit down. I'll be Trump. Sit down. Fake news. Sit down, okay? Just sit down. He was fine. He was good. I enjoyed him in the movie, but I mean, Best Actor. I mean, it just kind of like, or Best Supporting Actor, excuse me. It's kind of like, really? Well, okay. I mean, maybe. But then if you don't give it to him, who do you give it to, right? I mean, Tom Hanks, probably not. I mean, if you were to give it to Tom Hanks, it would just be his believability as Mr. Rogers. I mean, he wasn't in the movie that much. So you would just give it to him because, what he did do, it was small, short, but what he did do was so good. But I don't think it's going to go to Hanks. I don't think it will. I think Hanks might be a dark horse, but I don't think it's going to go to him. I think it is going to go to Pitt, but I don't necessarily think it should go to Pitt. You know what? But then, Joe Pesci, Al Pacino, I mean, they're essentially doing their thing too. I don't think it's going to go to Pacino. I think it's going to go to Pitt. But if it doesn't go to Pitt, I think a dark horse who might fly would be Hanks or Pesci. Funny enough. I think Pesci may sneak in there. But I think the likelihood is it's going to go to Pitt, but I don't think it necessarily should. But then again, between all of them, you can't say that, like, between the people who are nominated, yeah, I guess so. Pitt, I guess. I just don't think he should have been nominated. I don't think his performance was that. It wasn't a bad performance. I'm just like, well, that doesn't, It's same with DiCaprio in Best Actor. He was great. But he's always great, right? He's been great in other things he hasn't been nominated for. I don't necessarily think he should have been nominated, but I get why. Anyway, that's how I feel about Best Supporting Actor. That's a tough one. But the likelihood will probably go to Pitt. Best Actress, Charlize Theron, Renee Zellweger, Cynthia Erivo. Am I saying that right? Scarlett Johansson and how do you say this one? Saoirse Ronan. I've never even heard of this actress. Fascinating. I got to get on the ball with this. Saoirse Ronan. Ronan is the last name. probably butchering the first name. Anyway, I have not seen any of these films. I think it's probably going to go to... Well, I mean, there's, again, if you want to bring in the politics into this, it would probably go to Cynthia. But if you want to keep it out, and maybe it should go. Maybe it should go. Maybe she was the best. I have not seen Harriet. I've not seen it. So she could very well be the best. She could deserve it. I think it's probably going to go to Best Actress. I think it's either going to go to Charlize Theron, Cynthia Erivo, however you pronounce that. One of those two, maybe Renee Zellweger, maybe. One of those three, I would say. That would be my prediction. The front runner is probably... See, I haven't seen any of these movies. I'm dying to see Marriage Story. I hear Scarlett Johansson's great. Or it may go to... Yeah, may go to Little Women. That's a tough one too. That's a tough one. But I'm leaning towards... I'm thinking about the climate. I'm thinking about... But then Charlize Theron's already got one for Monster back in 2004. The movie was 2003. I believe she received her Oscar in 2004. So, yeah, I'd have to figure out what. Yeah, I would say it's probably going to go to the actress for Harriet. That's my feeling. Best Supporting Actress: Kathy Bates, Margot Robbie, Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh. Am I saying that right? Is that right? Is that how you say her last name? Probably not. And Laura Dern. Well, this I think is probably going to go to. I think it's going to go to probably Florence. Is that how you say it? Florence Pugh. If I'm saying her last name wrong, I apologize, Florence. I think she's probably going to take it. If there's a dark horse, it would be Kathy Bates. And then I don't know. You see, because Scarlett Johansson is nominated in both Best Supporting Actress and Best Actress, you would think it's yes, Florence. It's P. Is it Pugh? Pugh. Okay. That's what I thought. Florence Pugh. I think she's probably going to take it. I think your dark horse is Kathy Bates. That's who I think is your dark horse. And then I think maybe, although you might give it to Margot Robbie. You might. I think Margot Robbie, you know what? Actually, I think it's Florence, Margot, and your dark horse is Kathy Bates. I don't know if Scarlett Johansson's going to win. I'd be surprised because you'd think, she's in both categories, but I don't know if she might win I think she would win for Marriage Story over Jojo Rabbit. That's a tough one though, isn't it? I think she would win for Marriage Story over Jojo Rabbit. So if Scarlett Johansson's going to win for Best Actress, but I don't think she's going to win it. And if somebody's going to win, and then I think it's going to be probably Margot Robbie or Florence Pugh, and then your dark horse is Kathy Bates. That's how I'm kind of thinking here. I'm kind of feeling that. Scarlett Johansson, funny enough, I don't know. I don't think she's a lock. I really don't. Best Director: Quentin Tarantino, Todd Phillips, Bong Joon-ho for Parasite. Dude, you were amazing. Martin Scorsese. I say Scorsese. And Sam Mendes. I think this is probably, you know what? I think it's probably going to go to Sam Mendes for 1917. But I think the next in line would be Bong Joon-ho. I would, for Parasite. I would not be surprised if he came up and won. That would not surprise me at all. I would be totally, yeah. So I think first to Sam Mendes. I think if he doesn't win, you're probably looking at Bong Joon-ho. But if it's not Bong Joon-ho, I can't see Tarantino winning. I just can't. Then I guess it would probably Todd Phillips and Joker. I don't see Phillips winning. Maybe he might. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's Sam Mendes, Bong Joon-ho, and then Phillips. Maybe. I don't know if Scorsese or Tarantino is going to win it. I don't think that's going to happen. But man, I can see Bong Joon-ho being that dark horse. A lot of people have not seen Parasite. They're not familiar with it. They're not familiar with Bong Joon-ho. And they're just thinking, watch Parasite. Okay? Let me just say that. And then by the end of the movie, you'll be like, oh, could totally see this dark horse coming up. So that's how I feel about that. Best Original Music Score. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, 1917, Joker, Little Women, and Marriage Story. I think this is probably going to go to either Joker or 1917. I think Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is just more of a symbolic gesture to John Williams. It's not a bad score or anything, but I don't think there's anything necessarily special about it. So I think that was just sort of a nice little thing to do for Mr. Williams. But I think your front runners are 1917 and Joker. I think 1917 is probably going to take it. But if not, I think it'll be Joker. I don't think Little Women or Marriage Story has a chance. Best Animated Feature, Claws, Missing Link, Toy Story 4, How to Train Your Dragon, I Lost My Body. I think it's a pretty much a foregone conclusion that your two front runners are probably Toy Story 4 and How to Train Your Dragon. I think this is going to go to Toy Story 4. That's my guess. If not, How to Train Your Dragon. And then if not beyond that, I think maybe you're looking at Missing Link, maybe. Best Foreign Language Film, Les Miserables, Parasite, Corpus Christi, Honeyland, and Pain and Glory. I think this will probably go to Parasite, especially if Parasite, if they're not going to give it the best picture, they'll give it the best foreign language film, which is essentially best picture for foreign film, which is a huge, huge Academy Award honor. Huge. So yes, I think Parasite is probably going to take that. If not, maybe Honeyland then, or Pain and Glory. One of those two, probably. But I think Parasite's going to take it. I think so. That's what I think, fuckers. Best Original Screenplay. Marriage Story, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Parasite. Oh, there's two actors. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, sorry, two actors. Two writers nominated for Parasite. And Rian Johnson's Knives Out. I don't think it's going to go to Marriage Story. I think it's going to go to either Parasite or, funny enough, Knives Out. I think it's going to go to either Parasite or Knives Out. That's my feeling. That's my feeling on that. I just, for some reason, but then again, the Academy loves Tarantino. Hollywood loves Tarantino. They love self-indulgent movies about Hollywood. So he's gonna, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think, is going to get something. They're like, it's gonna get something. The question is, what is it gonna get? Because I don't think it's a foregone conclusion to look at any of the categories it's nominated in and go, oh yeah, that's totally Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's, category to lose, essentially. I don't think it is. I really don't. I don't think DiCaprio's a lock-in for Best Actor. I don't even think Pitt, he's more of a lock-in than DiCaprio. But I still think there's a chance that Pitt may not win. So I don't think he's locked. He's locked, but not locked. Best Original Screenplay? I don't know, man. Like, I'm still kind of like, Best Director? I don't think Tarantino's going to win that. But it would be surprising if he doesn't win something. If that movie doesn't win something. Maybe it is best original screenplay. But you got Parasite and Knives Out in there too. And it's like, I don't think Marriage Story is going to win it. I don't think. Because we've seen, it's a great story, but we've seen situations like that throughout film before. Although it's a powerhouse performance. I think the performances are the story is really good, but I think it's the performances that elevate it to the next level. So I don't think Marriage Story is going to win Best Original Screenplay. I think it's going to go to Parasite or Knives Out. I really do. And if I was leaning towards one, I'd say Parasite. But maybe Once Upon a Time. I don't know. Oh, we also have Sam Mendes for 1917 in there as well. Excuse me. I had to scroll over. So there you go. It could go to 1917. I actually don't think it's going to. I don't think 1917 is going to get Best Original Screenplay. Now, of course it could. I don't think it will. I think it's going to go to Knives Out or Parasite. Fascinating. Best Documentary Feature, The Edge of Democracy. For Sama, Honeyland, American Factory, and The Cave. Honeyland's probably yeah. I'd say Honeyland or... That's a tough one. Honeyland or The Edge of Democracy is probably... Or for Sama, too. This is a tough one. Tough one. I got to think about that one more. Best Adapted Screenplay. Now, obviously, for those of you that are wondering what the difference is between a Best Original Screenplay and a Best Adapted Screenplay, obviously, most of you probably already know. An original screenplay is just that, an original screenplay. It's not based on any book or source material or comic or graphic novel or mythology in terms of pre-existing sort of, story. Best Adapt, that's a Best Original. Best Adapted is obviously adapted from some sort of source material, either a book or a short story or a novella or a novel or a comic or whatever it is, right? That's Best Adapted Screenplay. So we have let me see here. We got Anthony McRae with Two Popes, Todd Phillips, Joker, Steve Zalian for The Irishman, Greta Gerwig for Little Women, and Taika Waititi for Jojo Rabbit. I think this is going to go to either Taika Waititi for Jojo Rabbit, or maybe it's going to go to Greta Gerwig for Little Women. That's who I think it's going to go to. Yeah. I don't think Joker has a chance in hell. I really don't. For Best Adapted Screenplay, I don't think so. I think it's going to, and it might, right? I mean, of course, but I'm thinking of the climate. I'm thinking of the political climate we're in. I'm just thinking about the feels out there, putting the feels out there. I'm thinking it's either going to go to Taika Waititi for Jojo Rabbit or Greta Gerwig for Little Women. That's my thought. If not those two, then I think, either Joker or The Irishman. I don't think the Two Popes has a hope in hell. I really don't. And there's also, right. That's the other guy for Joker. That's my thought on that. Best Cinematography. Ooh, man. Robert Richardson for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You got The Irishman. Roger Deakins for 1917. The Lighthouse, Joker. Ooh. I think this is going to go to Roger Deakins again for 1917. I do. I think Roger Deakins finally won his Academy Award, was it last year or the year before, for Blade Runner 2049, one of the legendary cinematographers of our time, and finally won. He'd been nominated many, many, many times, but finally won his Academy Award for Blade Runner 2049. I think he's probably going to win again for 1917. If he doesn't win, then I think it will either go to The Lighthouse or maybe The Irishman. I don't see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't. It's funny, isn't it? I hate to say this, but I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is going to get snubbed in a few categories here. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking there's going to be a few snubs in some categories, but I don't know. I mean, maybe. So my front runner's 1917, Roger Deakins, legend, followed by The Lighthouse. And then if neither of them win, I'm thinking, it's either Joker or The Irishman. I don't see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I just don't. Another cat hair on my mic there. That's what happens when you cuddle your cat in the morning. That's a whole other thing right there, folks. Good night, everybody. I'll be here all week. Do I even have that? There we go. Okay, so, yeah, and then best sound mixing. These are all, I'm interested in this stuff, but I don't know if you guys are. Best visual effects, of course. Best visual effects, Star Wars, Avengers Endgame, 1917, The Lion King, The Irishman. I think it's a foregone conclusion. It will probably go to The Lion King. I think The Lion King is probably going to win best visual effects. So that's what I think it's going to go to that. If it doesn't go to that, it will probably either go to Avengers or Star Wars, probably. Best costume design. I could see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood taking this one. Best costume design. I could see them taking this one. I could see that. I could see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood taking best costume design. Fascinating. But then again, Little Women. I think it's a three-way race between Little Women, Jojo Rabbit, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's what I think it is for costume design. Best production design? Ooh, there's a lot in here. Wow. That's a tough one. Man, Jojo Rabbit, 1917, Parasite, Once Upon a Time, The Irishman. Oh, man. I'm going to say best production design. I'm going to say either 1917 or Jojo Rabbit. Or Once Upon a Time. Once Upon a Time could take that too. Once Upon a Time could take production design. I think The Irishman's not going to get that many, funny enough. It got a lot of nominations, but I don't think it's going to win. As crazy as that sounds. Fascinating. And then, of course, best film editing, and you keep going here, best makeup and hairstyling, and best sound editing and sound mixing and short documentary and stuff. But anyways, we could keep going here. But those are the main categories anyway that most people are interested in, most people tune into. I'm interested in everything, but not everybody is. Wait a minute. There you are. I'm interested in everything, but not everybody is. So that is those are my sort of thoughts as we roll into the weekend here for the 92nd Academy Awards. And that's interesting, man. I don't know. I don't see, it's funny. There's some in there that you suspect being, a lock, right? And then there's some in there that I'm like, I don't know, it could go either way. I'm not sold on a few of those categories, even though it looks like it could be going this way. There's a few categories there where I'm not sold on it. So I'm not entirely sure. I could see you guys out of the corner of my eye talking amongst yourselves and giving your thoughts and opinions on who you think is going to win and all that kind of stuff. And there's a difference between who we want to win and who we think is going to win, right? And it's interesting. I mean, I've been to a few award shows myself, and I have been fortunate to have been nominated for 4 Voice Arts Awards in my life, and I've sat in a theater at Warner Brothers and amongst the top VO actors in the industry, and sat there and watched names pop up on the board and thought to myself, oh yeah, and it wasn't. And I was like, what the fuck? It's crazy. It can be kind of, it can. And then of course, like I'm not part of the voting body. So I've thought about becoming part of the voting body of the Society of Voice Arts and Sciences, but I just haven't made my way to do that yet. I'm eligible to do it, obviously, but I just haven't made my way to do that. So I don't know who everybody's voting for or how that's working, right? I know how the process works, but I was just kind of there's been times where I've been like, oh yeah, this is gonna, I turn to my girlfriend, I'm like, and all of a sudden they're like, and the Voice Arts Award goes to, and it's the person on, it's like, what? And sometimes that's not a bad thing. Like sometimes like, whoa, no way, that's awesome, or whatever, right? And then of course you see their work and you're like, yeah, that's amazing, You never know. It's award shows are interesting. Yes, they're self-indulgent. They absolutely are. And yes, they are full of pats on the back and egos and handshakes and it's full of all that. It is. It doesn't matter if it's the Academy Awards, the Voice Arts Awards, the Golden Globes, the whatever. I mean, it's a business, right? I mean, it's a business, and sometimes a multi-million-dollar business. So there's schmoozing and jostling and shaking hands and it is what it is, right? It's a business. But they are an interesting experience to attend, and who knows? Like I said, I mean, maybe Joker's going to win Best Picture. I mean, sometimes that happens, right? And I guarantee you there'll be people sitting there in the audience going, what? Not that it's not a good movie. It's a great movie. Is it worthy of Best Picture? Sure. But it's not the buzz between, insiders and people who know a thing. And I think that's going to, I think that's going to, the buzz right now is for 1917. So if you were a betting person and you want to pay attention to the then it would be in your best interest to probably, vote for 1917. But who knows, right? Who knows? You just never know. DMT Infinity says, Dave, isn't all this stuff rigged from the get-go, though? Or is that just misconception something? No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not rigged. That doesn't mean that politics doesn't play a part. But it's not rigged in the sense of that they could have, that there's the president of the Academy, let's say, right? And let's say, they're sitting there and they go, oh, look, Joker won Best Picture because it got the most votes. Well, fuck that. No, I want 1917 to win. It's definitely going to win. That doesn't happen. No, if Joker gets the most votes, they get the most votes. Now, from the people who are voting can be full of bias, right? Can be full of political rhetoric, can be full of a political narrative. Maybe the people voting really want that movie to win because it's got more ethnic diversity. That doesn't make it right or wrong, but it did get the most votes, right? Now, whether it was the right movie to nominate, that's a whole other thing, right? Whether it deserved it based on merit is a whole other different thing. But it was the movie or actor or director or writer who did receive the most votes. So it's not rigged in the sense that they didn't receive the most votes and they just slipped somebody in there. That doesn't happen. But that doesn't mean that the people voting don't have their own bias, because they do. They do, right? I mean, but that also doesn't mean that the people voting, don't not include that either. I mean, they might. It doesn't mean that people voting don't vote purely and honestly either about, what they feel, and they leave their political biases aside. Lots of people do that too, right? But it's not rigged in the sense of that, the votes don't matter anyway. It's just a symbolic gesture because it was predetermined 6 months ago or something. No, it doesn't happen like that. Let me see here. Super chat from Frank Riker. Thanks, buddy. Your opinion if Scarlett Johansson wins both. If Scarlett, I will see. Now I see. Here's the thing. Here's my opinion. Well, fuck, come on. But if I want my opinion to be informed, then I would see both movies she was in and every movie that she was nominated against and watch the actors in those movies. Then my opinion would be informed. So if she wins both, that means the actors voted for her in both categories the most. She received the most votes. Now, maybe it was by one vote she won, but she still received the most votes. Maybe she's just that good. She resonated with many people, right? But I would have to, but for me, I'd have to see the movie. It would be a little strange. It'd be a little strange. But who knows? Good question, though. Fascinating. Jonathan McCullough says, thank you for the super chat, buddy. He says, I turned the big 30 today. Can you say happy birthday in Trump's voice from Belfast? Jonathan, I just want to wish you a happy birthday. It's great. You're the big 30. It's amazing. Tremendous. You look great. You don't look a day over 30. Sit down, okay? Just sit down. I love you. You're amazing. Happy birthday to you. It's great. It's great. I love you. You're amazing. Trump. Let me see here. What do we got? Did I miss any super chat? I'm just going to go back to my live board here, make sure I didn't miss any. I did not. No, just 2 came in. Okay, good. I was afraid I'm going to miss something. Let me see. Smiths Grove. Everybody saying happy birthday, Jonathan. Yes, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Melania. Can you imagine that? Melania, happy birthday. Okay, just happy birthday. Thank you. You're welcome. Jason Wiley says, Dave, how do you feel about the Oscars going hostless again this year? And who would you like to see host in the future? I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the Oscars going hostless. It didn't bother me. It did seem to, even though the Oscars are still 3 hours long, it did seem to sort of speed up the process a little bit. It made it a little more interesting. I think it's okay to bring different people out. Maybe you don't have just one host, but you have, a couple of hosts, but not hosts in the traditional sense where it seems so formulaic and structured. I mean, it's always structured. You have to be. But I mean, in the sense of that maybe you have maybe it's Ellen, comes out and she introduces the show. And then, the next segment, it's somebody else. It's Tina Fey's up there doing her thing like she did last year, right? And then maybe it's somebody else. Just kind of get, the faces of Hollywood up there and just kind of see what's, I don't know, just something like that. I'm okay with it. The climate has changed. It's not the same anymore. If there's one thing that Hollywood loves just as much as a self-indulgent Tarantino Hollywood movie is tradition. And absolutely, I think tradition is important. 100%. I think preserving the integrity of traditions and never forgetting where you come from, and what made you who you are is vitally important. But it's 2020. It's not 1970 whatever with Bob Hope hosting. It's a different climate now. It's a different generation. Technology is expanding exponentially. Things are going faster and faster and faster, quicker and quicker and quicker. How we consume our media, right? I said this last year, I think, or maybe it was the year before, in a video. I said, how especially the younger generation, those of you that are 30 and younger, you don't remember a time when there was no internet. You don't remember a time when really almost, if you're, and certainly 25 and younger, you don't remember a time when there was no social media, because social media has been around essentially for 15 years. Well, if you're 25, 15 years ago, you were 10, and anything beyond that, it gets a bit blurry. You grew up in the digital age. You grew up where the internet and YouTube and social media and Vimeo and whatever is part of how you consume entertainment. I mean, if you're my age, 40 and over, you remember the days when, you couldn't binge watch anything and you had, and television was massive. You know what I mean? And people rushed home, to watch primetime TV and, and it was a different world. So now I think the Oscar, like people used to tune into the Oscars, not just to see who won, but for the host, whether it was Bob Hope or whether it was Billy Crystal, people loved watching the hosts. Now it's not a big deal anymore. The climate has changed. The entertainment landscape has changed. Our attention spans have changed. And now people don't need to tune into the Oscars to find out who won. If you, like 35, 40 years ago, if you didn't sit and watch the Oscars on television, you wouldn't know who fucking won until the next day in the newspaper, or maybe the 11 o'clock news that night if the show, was over. There was no immediacy. Now, in order to find out who won, you don't have to watch it because the Oscars are tweeting it 8.7 seconds after somebody wins their award. So you don't have to tune into anything. You can just sit, on your phone. There it is on Twitter. There it is on Instagram. There it is on YouTube. There it is on Facebook. It's just boom, 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 boom. Why would you tune in? Why would you tune in? Why are you tuning in? Right? So in order to get people to tune in, to actually tune in and watch, you got to evolve, right? You got to evolve. And not having hosts, but maybe having, revolving hosts throughout a show or something. Yeah, change it up, change it up. Roll with the punches, right? That's what you got to do, man. That's what you got to do. Super chat from Big G. A crime if Joaquin Phoenix doesn't win. Let me see. Yeah, well, like I said, I think it's a foregone conclusion that he is going to win. But to be fair, he's also up against Jonathan Pryce, Adam Driver, Antonio Banderas, and Leonardo DiCaprio. I think he's going to win. And like I said, if he doesn't win, then I think it's either going to go to Jonathan Pryce or Adam Driver. I don't think it's going to go to DiCaprio, and I don't think it's going to go to Banderas. If it went to Adam Driver, it'd be like, okay, yeah, he's a solid actor, and he did a great job in Marriage Story. But I agree with you. I think it is a foregone conclusion that it will be Joaquin Phoenix, 100%. Yeah. David Quintanilla, thank you very much, buddy. Says, because an impression of the Donald that is so high caliber deserves a tip. Cheers. Oh, thanks. Oh, really? It's just a caricature cartoon version of Trump. I could never do that and be taken seriously, right? But if somebody animated a cartoon, I could do that voice and it would fit, right? You get, oh yeah, it's totally supposed to be Trump. Yes, it's great. It's amazing. Sit down. Sit down. Okay, just sit down. Okay. Fucking Trump. Oh, my Lord. Frank Riker, super chat. Thank you very much. Frank says, if Joaquin Phoenix wins for Joker, he'll be one of the only people to have won for playing the same character besides Heath Ledger, like Robert De Niro and Marlon Brando did for The Godfather. Very good point. That's right. Very good point. And, let's not forget that he's playing, people like to point out that, okay, I'm not convinced that Heath Ledger would have won if he didn't pass away. I know that's not a very nice thing to say, but it's how I feel. Now, maybe he still would have won, but I'm not so sure. But that was definitely a comic book version of Joker. It's hard, it's hard because even Nolan's The Dark Knight, it was a comic book movie, but it was a serious, grounded in reality comic book movie. Now, it wasn't quite as meta per se and as cerebral and psychological as Todd Phillips' Joker. It was more comic book movie than Joker, but it still wasn't, like the Marvel Cinematic comic book movie, right? It wasn't the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel kind of, it was still kind of gritty and dark. And he won. And it looks like Joaquin Phoenix is about to win. It's not so much about the traditional sense of the Joker as it is about the style, really, at the end of the day. Because I don't think Cesar Romero would ever win for Best Joker. I don't think Mark Hamill is going to win for if he was to, like, if that kind of, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that gets Oscar noms. But when you start to tap into the deep fabric of a person's psyche, especially in today's climate and what makes them tick, and you hire an actor. I remember when I found out that Joaquin Phoenix was hired to be the Joker, I was like, brilliant casting, because he's a great actor and he can go there. And when I read the synopsis for Joker and what it was going to, be about, I was like, that's great. That is something because he can go there. And he went there. So, but you remove, and again, I'm the first to say, yeah, but if it's part of the story, you got to look at it as, a whole. But Arthur Fleck could not have been the Joker, and it could have been another character altogether, an original character. And I think Joaquin, because his performance is so powerful, I think he probably still would have been nominated. So they're not really nominating the Joker as more they are that his portrayal of this really deeply disturbed person who just so happens to end up being the Joker. Do you know what I mean? And he was brilliant. He was brilliant. It's one of my favorite movies of the year, if not my favorite movie of the year, for sure. Thank you for the super chat, buddy. Really appreciate it. Frank sending that in. But you're right. You are right. Danita Brown, that's a great idea for award show hosts. Mix it up during the show. I think so too. Wouldn't that be fun? You bring lots of people out there. I think that'd be a lot of fun. ACDC 113089 says, Dave, I know you're a big Harrison Ford fan. Are you going to check out The Call of the Wild? Probably not. I'll probably watch it when it comes to streaming, but I probably won't go to the theater to see it because I think the CGI dog was a mistake. Now, I could watch the movie and be like, this is great. This is great. But I think the CGI dog was a mistake. I understand that working with animals is always difficult. There's a saying in the industry that, never work with animals and children, because it can be, unless you're working with an extremely talented child actor like a Macaulay Culkin or a Elijah Wood or a Dakota Fanning or, somebody like that back in their day who was just fucking adult. You know what I mean? They were just so talented. 9 times out of 10, working with children is a pain in the ass. And same with animals, especially if they're animals that are not, dogs are probably the best to work with, especially if they're well-trained, but other animals can be a bitch. I don't have firsthand experience with that, but I know people who have, and it's like, oh. But that being said, I just think that was a mistake. I know there's the animal rights thing, and PETA probably would have been breathing down their PETA, I guess. Yeah, would have been breathing down their neck, and you would have had people stepping in on why using a real dog. But it's like, use a real dog, and then when you're going to be putting the dog in danger, like leaping over a river onto a raft or jumping off a cliff down into the water or whatever it is, well, then you CGI the dog. You just CGI the dog. But you don't have to use a CGI dog when they're sitting in some sort of, shed or barn just having a conversation. It looks weird. The CGI is not at a point where you can do that. You can't do that. It's not there yet. I don't believe it. It looks fake. And it will only continue to look more fake as the years roll on. Nobody's going to look at The Call of the Wild Dog 25 years from now and go, wow, it looks even more real today. No, because technology just will continue to get better and better. So you'll look at it and go, well, that looks like dog, no pun intended, shit. Just use a real dog. Use a real well-trained dog that's not going to be in harm's way, well taken care of, right? And every time that it's got to do some sort of stunt, you CGI it, and it's from a distance, and if it's quick and far, nobody's going to know. We'll know, but nobody's going to know, right? Nobody's going to care. So I love Harrison Ford, my favorite actor of all time. I would love to watch this movie, and I will watch it, but I won't pay to go see it because I'm just like, oh, come on. Anyway, that's how I feel about it. Holly Klein says, happy that I grew up in a time with no social media. I agree, Holly. I could not agree more. I mean, I remember the days when, you know, and then if you wanted to, you know, I mean, you know, you used to buy those blank VHS tapes, and if your favorite show was coming on and you wanted to have, like, I have stacks of VHS tapes full of Three's Company and Elf and Family Ties, and I think even The Price is Right. As like, I used to put my, you know, blank tapes in the VCR and hit record and tape these shows, because that's how you did it, right? And then you could watch it, you know, The Cosby Show. I think I even have old tapes of that. Oh yeah. Yeah. Nowadays, of course, you know, people with social media and streaming and I mean, it's a catch-22 because it is wonderful. I mean, I wish, like, kids today, and I'm not trying to sound, you know, pretentious or condescending. But I mean, you know, kids today who are like, I want to make a movie, but I don't know what to do. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I would have given anything to have a pocket computer, because that's what these are. They're pocket computers, right? You've heard me say that 1,000 times. They're not cell phones. I mean, they're pocket computers that just so happen to make phone calls. But 98% of the time, you're not on the phone. You're like this, right? You're using it as a computer. You're typing, you're searching Facebook, you're whatever you're doing. You're rarely talking on the phone. They're pocket computers that shoot full HD 1920 by 1080. And some of them now can shoot different frame rates. You can shoot 29 frames a second, which is video. You can shoot 24 frames a second, which gives more of a film quality. I mean, are you kidding me? If I had this in 1994, I would have been out there shooting every fucking day. And now you have, like, Photoshop at your fingertips, all sorts of editing software at your fingertips, all sorts of audio mixing. And look, is there a learning curve? Do you have to learn how to use this stuff? Sure. Yeah, you do. But I mean, I was editing VCR to VCR back in 1995. We'd go out and shoot on this big high 8, you know, video camera or a VHS camera, and we'd shoot our films. And to edit the film, we'd have 2 VCRs set up, and we'd be like having one hitting, you know, record and one hitting play, and we'd have them hooked up, and and sometimes we tried to edit in camera and stuff, and it was terrible. And then to add music, we'd have like a ghetto blaster, a boombox right up next to the microphone as we were shooting, you know, so it had to be like the right volume and shit. There was no fucking digital editing, you know. They're not for the home consumer. Let's just put it that way. Not for the home consumer. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy what you children have at your fingertips now. All right, that's my old man rant done. Frank Riker says, just had a thought. In the memoriam section, we should have holograms of those who passed on stage like Tupac. You know, that's actually a really cool idea. I don't know what the cost would be for that. That might be a hefty cost to do and I don't think you could do every single person, because the memoriam also has people that are just not known, and you may not be able to have them, you might not have footage of them in motion, or you may not have the proper footage of them to be able to create the hologram, if you know what I mean. And if it's not uniform, if it doesn't look like everybody is created the same way, moving the same way, or they're whatever, then it doesn't really work, right? But I think in principle, what you're saying, I do really like that, Frank. And I think that maybe you could have, instead of having them on screen, you have them sort of in hologram form, but maybe they're not moving. They're just kind of there on stage or something. Like it's almost like a you know, a transmission from, you know, Emperor Palpatine or something. It's just there on the stage, but maybe they're not moving, or maybe there's slight movement or something, and they're kind of smiling. I don't know. There's a lot to talk about that, or talk about with that. But that's an interesting idea. Don't know the cost of it. Don't know if you could do it with everybody, because of the lack of material that may exist in order to make that a reality. But it's kind of a cool idea. That's kind of a cool idea, Frank. I like that. Let's see here. Colin Altman says, Dave McRae, if a horror movie got nominated, which one would you pick? Which one would I pick? You mean from this year? I don't know. I haven't seen most of the horror movies that have come out this year, because most horror movies are garbage. So, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, Parasite is kind of a horror movie, but not. It's not a. It's a thriller. It's a thriller. So it's not really a horror per se. And I'm glad to see it nominated because it was utterly fucking fantastic. And but in terms of the horror movies of 2019, I don't know what horror movies came out this year. Let me just. I mean, I know there was Pet Sematary and there was Midsummer and. 2019 horror movies. Let's see. Doctor Sleep. Yeah. Annabelle. Us. Child's Play. Brightburn. It. Yeah. There's. The Lighthouse is. Well, I guess The Lighthouse is a horror movie per se. I don't see any movies here. Yeah. LA Zombieland. The Silence. Little Monsters. 47 Meters Down. Ma. I don't think there's any horror movies here that are worthy of a nomination. Most horror movies are not worthy of a nomination. Most are not. Most are not worthy of an Academy Award nomination. It's primarily the reason why they created, I think what's the horror award? Essentially the horror, or science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Is it the Saturn Awards? I think. Something like that. I don't think there's anything there. I mean, you might be able to include Us in there. But beyond that, I mean, there wasn't really anything worthy, in my opinion. So I'm not sure, man. I don't know. Probably nothing. Jason Myers says, Dave, what's your favorite thoughts on Rick Moranis is in talks of comeback of retirement to a sequel? I heard about that. I think Rick Moranis, I love Rick Moranis. Good Canadian guy. There's a lot of Canadians attached to Ghostbusters, right? You got Ivan Reitman, the director, who's a Slovakian Canadian. You got Dan Aykroyd, of course, who's a Canadian, born in Ottawa. You got Rick Moranis, born here in Toronto, who's a Canadian. And you also have, there's another Canadian connection too. Well, if you look at the new Ghostbusters movie, you got Jason Reitman, his son, Canadian, directing it. Finn Wolfhard, Canadian, directing it, right? Not directing it, in the movie, I mean. But anyway, Rick Moranis, I love Rick Moranis. He's a Canadian treasure of comedy back in the 80s and 90s. And although he did step away from acting to raise his children because his wife passed away. That's why he essentially retired. Now, he did continue to act for a few years after his wife passed. But I think things got a little difficult at home. And I think he wanted to spend more time. I don't mean difficult in the sense there was something wrong. I just mean that I think he began to see that, you know what, I want to spend more time with my kids. And I think the death of his wife affected him greatly. And that's why he stepped away. He's never really officially retired, but because he's been away for so long, that's sort of what people have said. Well, I guess he's retired. And for all intents and purposes, if you step away from your job for 20 years, even though you haven't said it, you're pretty much, you're retired. But he hasn't officially retired, like somebody like a Gene Hackman or, something, or Sean Connery. So I would love to see him back. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That's an iconic 1989, 90, somewhere around there. Iconic. Is it a sequel? Is it a reboot completely? I'm not entirely sure. But what I will say is that apparently he's not coming back to Ghostbusters. That disappoints me. Although I understand it. Maybe it was something he didn't feel, or maybe they're keeping it locked, so secretive. I don't get the sense they are. I mean, they have confirmed, it has been confirmed that Rick Moranis is not going to be in Ghostbusters this coming year, Ghostbusters Afterlife. But who knows? Maybe it's a sleight of hand. Maybe they're lying. That doesn't usually happen. But we can still hold out hope that maybe he'll be in it. But maybe it just wasn't something that he thought, he wasn't seen on set. I mean, we know that Sigourney Weaver and Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson and Bill Murray, and they were all seen on set. They all went out to dinner, right? Rick Moranis Annie Potts was there too. Rick Moranis was nowhere to be found. So to have him come back for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and not Ghostbusters somehow doesn't feel right to me. But I still want to see him come back. And to come back to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, okay, all right, okay, you know. But man, I want to see him as Louis Telly. Super chat comes in from Blood 1987. Thank you, man. Dave, you actually know who Tupac is? Did you ever get into his music? I actually know who Tupac is. Why wouldn't I know who Tupac is? He was huge in the 90s when I was a teenager. Of course I know who Tupac is. Tupac Shakur, Tupac. Yes, I didn't get into his music per se, but they used to play his music a lot at my high school dances and things like that. And in the mid-2000s, for the Biography channel in the US, I narrated a documentary. There was a show called Final 24, and it was a British Canadian show, I think. Anyway, the narrator of that show was, God, I always forget his name. The narrator of that show was, oh, they even have me. It says here, narrated by Dave McRae. It was narrated by me, but it wasn't, it was narrated by Danny Wallace. That's it. Danny Wallace is the guy. He's a comedian, a voice actor. He wrote, you know the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey? Danny Wallace wrote the book based on that. Anyway, Danny Wallace is a UK voice actor who narrated a series called Final 24. And the premise of Final 24 was it was the last 24 hours in a celebrity's life, right? So they did things on, like, you know, Tupac. They did things on Jim Morrison and Nicole Smith and John Belushi and Robert Kennedy, I think, and, you know, a bunch of people, right? The last 24 hours of somebody's life. And they then were going to repackage it and put it on the Biography channel in the US. This is like 2006 or 7. But they didn't want Danny. I don't know why. Well, I know why, but I think, fuck it. It sounds great. He's great. He sounds great on it. They repackaged it, but they wanted an American sounding voice, right? They didn't want the UK voice because they felt that the North American neutral sort of sounding voice would somehow get people to watch. Okay. So anyways, I was hired to do it. So now, because that was sort of a one-off thing, if you were to watch Final 24 now, even most of the clips online are with Danny Wallace's voice, because that was the first one. And mine was a run for about a year or two on the Biography channel in the US. I did every episode. I think we were 13 or 14. And it was my voice. And one of the episodes that I did was Tupac Shakur. And that clip might still be on YouTube. If you YouTube Final 24 Tupac Shakur, or just Tupac, you might find it. You might find it. You'll know instantly it's me, obviously, because you'll hear my voice. But that was like 2006 or 7, whatever. But yeah, of course I know who Tupac is. I'm not, 90. He was huge in the 90s when I was a teenager. Absolutely. Anyway, yeah. So, yes, but I wasn't necessarily into his music. I might know a couple of his songs if I heard it, and certainly they played, his songs at like high school dances and shit like that, of course, but I wasn't necessarily into his music. Let's see. Vegas Courier says, any movies from last year that you would rather have come out this year, so it would have some more good or big ones. If go with Dr. Sleep, I don't care when a movie comes out. Here's something about me that you guys probably know. I rarely go to the movie theater. I probably go to the movie theater maybe 5 times a year, if that. That might surprise you because I'm a movie guy, but it's because most movies I just don't give a fuck about seeing in the movie theater. I don't need to rush it. Now, that doesn't mean, like, if you go to 30 movies a year, I think that's awesome. I think that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But especially in my, but it takes me, like, if I'm going to pay to go see a movie, I want it to be something that I'm like, oh, dude, I fucking got to see that. You know, most trailers that I see, I'm like, meh, you know, yeah, looks fine. But it's not a rush out to the theater to see it. Because the theater experience to me, ironically, is so special. I love the movie theater experience. And when you watch a great movie in the movie theater, now, is there always room for fluff movies and fart movies and popcorn movies that don't move you in any way, shape, or form and you just go to hang out and go watch a movie? Of course, man. Of course. 100% absolutely. But I really love sitting in the movie theater and walking out going, whew, that was fucking amazing. Like when I walked out of Joker, it was like, man, that was good. Now that's why I go to the movie theater. Otherwise, you know, like something for like, you know, Spiral or Dr. Sleep or you know, I don't know, what's coming out, The Invisible Man, you know, it's like, yeah, it looks good. Looks good. And if somebody wanted to go to the movie, like if my buddy wanted to go with me to see The Invisible Man, would I go to the theater to see it? Yeah, probably. But I probably won't see it in the theater because I just, you know, and it's not because it doesn't look good. It looks promising. It looks cool, right? It looks really cool. But I don't know. I guess I'm just, you know, I reserve my theater going experiences for select movies, and for various reasons. But there are some people that go to the movies every week, you know, go to the movies like 6, 7, 8 times a month. You know, and I'm just more, I pick my movies, my movie theater experience sort of, you know, like the last movie I saw in the theater. What was the last movie I saw in the theater? The last movie, well, it would have been The Rise of Skywalker. That would have been the last movie I saw in the theater. And before that, it would have been Knives Out, because I definitely wanted to see that. And I'm trying to think the next movie that I'll probably see in the theater, it might not be till May. It may not be until that one with what's her face? I don't know. It depends on what other ones are coming out. Let me see here. March 2020 movies. March 2020 movies. Oh, No Time to Die. I might go see that one because it's James Bond, and there's always room for some James Bond. Yeah, might go see that. Yeah, Quiet Place 2. No, I don't care about that. I'll see that at home. No Time to Die. Oh, No Time to Die, excuse me, is April 2nd. That's April 2nd. Mulan's March 27th. Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. I don't know. I'm funny that way. It's not that I won't go to the theater to see all sorts of movies, but I'm very picky. And ironically, it's not because I don't like the movies and experiences. It's because I actually like it. And I feel like I'm very picky. I like to reserve the movies I have to, because sometimes there's movies you have to see in the theater. You have to. And then there's other movies you're like, yeah, I could see that in the theater, but you know what? It'll be out on DVD in a few months, you know, or Blu-ray or 4K, whatever, right? And I can just watch it in my home theater. So, Jason Wiley says, food in theaters is so expensive that I end up taking my own stuff in Farcha. Oh, I hear you, man. Very expensive. Hey, and if you got a family, I mean, if you have a family, you know, of like, say, 2 or 3 kids, to go to the movie theater can cost you like $150, you know, between, you know, maybe you got to pay for a babysitter, maybe you don't. But if you take, well, no, I mean, I guess if you take your whole family, right? Because you wouldn't have to pay for a babysitter unless there was a really, really young one that you couldn't take. But let's say you take your whole family. It's you, your wife, your husband, and your 2 kids, let's just say 2 kids. Well, between the admission, between you and your wife, it's going to be at least $40, right? And then you got the 2 kids. So let's say, you know, if it's 65, let's say, yeah, $55, let's say, plus, you know, it's going to be at least $100 with tax by the end of the day. So it's crazy. It's crazy. You can't do that every week. You're going to be spending, what, $500 a month on just going to the movie theater? I mean, that's ridiculous. Whoa, that's ridiculous. Joseph Esposito says, hey, Dave, I'd love to get your quick interpretation of the Joker. Was it all in his head or real? No, I believe it is intentionally left open to interpretation for that. I don't believe it was all in his head. I think it was actually happening. I think it was actually happening. But I think there's, it's hard for me to give a quick analysis on the Joker because there's so many different awesome layers there. But I will say, yes, I will say that I do think it was actually happening, but I think they left it open to interpretation on towards the end of the movie because they want to have some room, some liberties to be able to develop a little more depending on which way they go if they do a sequel to it. I don't think it needs a sequel at all. If it were up to me, I wouldn't do a sequel, but I understand why they want to do a sequel. Money. Of course. But yeah, I think it was actually, well, I mean, most of it was actually happening. We know that there were things that were happening in his head, right? Like, he's imagining himself on this talk show where, the host is very polite and kind to him, right? We know that he imagined being with this girl. So you do have to take those things into consideration, that there are heavy examples and evidence that the entire thing could all be in his head, that he is just imagining himself as this Joker. That's entirely possible. And if that is the case, hypothetically, if it is the case, and you were to do a sequel, you might be able to then expand on those delusions and actually make those delusions a reality, even though they weren't a reality in the first movie, per se. But they're a reality in his own mind. In his mind, they actually happen. So I do think this was happening. And the certain isolated incidences that they showed us were in his head were actually just in his head. But everything else surrounding that was real and actually happening. I think that is what was going on there. But it's a fascinating, the layers are very interesting. And I do have a video on my channel, I think, where I kind of talk about that. But yeah, really cool stuff. Super chat from Big G says, Dave, you going to see Halloween Kills in October? Yes, definitely. Definitely going to see Halloween Kills in October. Frank Riker says, I'm calling out of work for Halloween. I'm calling. Hey, yeah, I bet you a lot of people are going to do that. Brandon Conwell says, I missed your live chat when you're doing Psycho, but it's one of my favorite movies and I've seen everything about the character. Oh yeah, it's great. It's great. The original Psycho is watch it. Go watch my live feed and you'll or my show. It's no longer live. And you'll find out what I think about it. One of my favorite horror films of all time. Let's see. Ed Red 7712 says, Dave, are there any drive-in theaters still around in your area? Had some great times at many local drive-ins until it went under a couple years ago. Yes, there is. There is one. There are a couple, actually. There's one in Mississauga, Ontario. Mississauga, like Mississippi, but Mississauga. Mississauga, Mississauga. That is a suburb. It's a city all on its own. There's probably about 1 million people, actually, but it's a suburb, essentially, a suburb city of Toronto. And there is a drive-in in sort of a rural area of Mississauga called, I think it's called The Five. I think it's called The Five Drive-In, I think. And it's been there for decades. And it's still there. And every now and then when I'm out that way, I will drive by it. And I've been there, not in years, but I'll drive by it and be like, oh yeah, we should go to the drive-in. That'd be a lot of fun. So yeah, there's another one, I think there's another one south of Toronto, kind of around on your way to Niagara Falls, I think. Anyways, there's a few. They are very far and few between, and certainly not nearly as accessible as they used to be. But yeah, I love drive-ins. Love drive-ins. I remember. I mean, back in the day when I was a little kid, I saw Back to the Future at the drive-in when it was first released. I saw Gremlins at the drive-in when it was first released. So that was really cool. And then in the late 90s, I saw Speed 2 and Volcano drive-in. Speed 2 and Volcano at the drive-in. It was a double feature. And then I think I saw the first Avengers at the drive-in as well, back in 2012. So I've been to the drive-in a few times. Gary Rangel says, "Did you love Heath Ledger's Joker? I think he's the iconic performance everyone loves, including me. Phoenix was awesome, but didn't overshadow Ledger." Well, they're two different. They're very two different interpretations. You have to understand that although I did love his performance as the Joker, but I think it's important that we understand that Joker with Joaquin Phoenix is not a superhero film. It's not a superhero film. What they did was brilliant. This is what they did to you, okay? It's manipulation, but you love it anyway because you got a great movie. They created a story about a guy named Arthur Fleck who suffers from mental illness, who struggles to find his place, who gets beat up, right? Who wants to be somebody, who has this awkward, weird relationship with his mother, and so on and so forth. Everything in that movie, right? And he imagines himself as this person. They used the Joker character as the catalyst to tell this story. But the Joker character, you could have used other characters to tell this story. You could have not used any superhero character and just told a story about a guy who imagines himself as something else, right? You don't have to use the Joker. You could use anything. Same powerhouse performances, same actors, same execution, right? Obviously, some things would have to change because there are things in the film like, Wayne Manor and Bruce Wayne and Thomas Wayne and the subtext and plots of all. Yeah, obviously, you would have to design it a bit differently. But they're using the archetype of the Joker to get your ass in the seat because you wouldn't go see the movie if it wasn't about the Joker. But in theory, you could tell that story about anybody because it's not solely reliant on the crux of the narrative isn't solely reliant on the Joker. It's like, hey, imagine this, but with the Joker. But you could say something like, hey, imagine this, but with a banker. Hey, imagine this, but with a hockey player. Hey, imagine, it might sound funny, but if you did it totally legit the same way, fucking balls to the wall, exactly what they did with the Joker, you could do it. They're using the Joker character to get your ass in the seats. They're using the archetype, right? It's not a superhero movie. It's a psychological thriller about this guy who thinks he's the Joker. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's not a superhero film. So to compare Heath Ledger's Joker, which is a superhero Joker, although even that Joker and that movie is more grounded in reality, that is not Jack Nicholson's Joker. It's not Tim Burton's cartoony world, right? It's more grounded in reality, but it's very much the Joker that we know. So to compare them is just strange to me because they're two completely different iterations of the Joker, right? Two completely different iterations. So yes, I do love Heath Ledger's Joker a lot. I think he's great. And I love Joaquin Phoenix Joker great. And then you have to ask yourself, which one do you prefer? Not which one is better, because you can't. They're apples and oranges. Do you like apples better or do you like oranges better? Right? Well, I prefer my Joker like this. That's why. But that's not because what he did was better. It's impossible because they're not doing the same thing. It's not like Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips remade The Dark Knight and Phoenix is doing Heath Ledger's Joker. He wasn't, right? So you can't really, like, it's hard to compare on that level. So that I think is important to keep in mind. Joaquin Phoenix was a different interpretation of a character that they're just using the archetypes and the certain little things of, things to drive this story that's a psychological thriller about a guy who suffers from mental illness. I mean, that's essentially what it is, and who just happens to be the Joker. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's how I feel about it anyway. I mean, it's not a superhero film. The Joker's not. It's a psychological thriller. I mean, you can put the Joker beside The Shining, Doctor Sleep, and, Seven. Like, I mean, it's in a category on a shelf in a video store in Blockbuster in 1999. Like, you can put it, it's in the psychological thriller set. Like, that's what I mean. It wouldn't be in adventure, Anyway, that's how I feel about it anyway. That's how I feel about it. The Film Addict says, hey, Dave, do you think Jack Nicholson will return to acting, or do you think he's done? I don't think he's not acting. I just think he hasn't done many things in a while. I think he would. I think he would. But, a lot of the times when people get older, we don't know privately sort of what their health is like. Maybe, I mean, when you get to that age and you've won Academy Awards and you've been there, done that, you're just kind of like, you know what? I'm done, man. Been there, done that, done what I've been able, I've needed to do and all that kind of jazz. So I hope so. I like Jack Nicholson, but he's not the same. I mean, he's not the same Jack as he was, 20 years ago. He can't be now, right? It's hard, and he's not in the best shape in the world. So it's, who knows? But we'll see. We'll see. Let's see. Joseph Esposito says, in the last Joker scene, Clapton's song White Room was on, maybe an allusion to the White Room of the asylum, and during the scene he was really in the White Room and he was imagining thought. Great. Now Joseph is on the ball. Now I'm not saying that's true, right? We don't know, right? We don't know what the creative decisions and intention were from the filmmakers with that particular scene, but when you're watching a psychological thriller that is steeped in layers, and those layers are crucial to the interpretation of the movie, there's a high probability that was not an accident. For example, Gary Glitter, his Rock and Roll Part 2, right? 1 second here. Let me just make sure that I have this correct. I want to make sure I have the right sex offenses. Okay, it was sexual discovered children and right. Okay, yeah, okay. I just want to make sure before I say this. So, Gary Glitter's Rock and Roll Part 2, which is a great song. I've loved that song since like the late 80s. I mean, it's been around longer, but in the late 80s, early 90s, obviously being Canadian, I'm a hockey guy, and during the 91-92 Stanley Cup, I think, it was the Pittsburgh Penguins versus the Minnesota North Stars. Do you remember that? And they no longer exist. They're now the Minnesota Wild. But anyway, Gary Glitter's Rock and Roll Part 2 used to play at those hockey games, and he used to play across sports all the time. Na 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 na, hey, na 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 na, hey. It's a great catchy tune, right? Awesome, right? And that's the song that plays when Joaquin Phoenix is dancing on the steps. For some people, they're like, that's weird. Okay, fair. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll find out that I think Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, Arthur Fleck, has been sexually abused, because there are scenes in that movie with that bigger guy that comes over to him, right? The guy that he ripped the throat out, that bigger guy. There's a couple of shots that he comes over to him, and the way he's speaking to him and how he's referring to him and how the camera is placed at crotch level in sort of in front of Arthur's face and how Arthur sort of responds to him. I believe it's heavily alluded that there is an abusive relationship there. One that is very uncomfortable. Gary Glitter was charged with sexual assault and having possessed child pornography, I believe is what it was, right? In November 97, Glitter was arrested after a technician discovered pornographic images of children on his hard drive and laptop and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Anyways, you can read all about it here on Wikipedia, but that's been known for quite some time. And that song was not, and he's dancing on the steps after he kills the big guy, right? And lets the little guy go, right? because the little guy was his buddy, you know? He didn't have a beef with him. And it's at that moment when he destroys a part of his past that I think was abusive on sick levels. And there he is dancing out on the steps to Gary Glitter's Rock and Roll Part 2. That wasn't just because it's a cool song, right? There's a lot of layers there. There's a lot of meaning to that choice. Very much probably to what you're talking about too with Clapton's song, The White Room, right? Those are things that if you know what to look for, if you know how to pay attention, you'll notice those subtleties and nuances that are there because they seep into your subconscious, right? Tapping into the psychological psyche or the psyche of the viewer when you're creating a psychological thriller, it has to be nuanced, right? You want these things to seep into the subconscious of your viewer because it makes them feel a certain way or think a certain way, and they're not quite sure why they're feeling that way or thinking that way. And your example is undoubtedly probably one. And I can tell you right now that Gary Glitter's Rock and Roll Part 2 playing at that scene, which is a scene of redemption, which is a scene of freedom. He's free from the abuse. Yeah, I don't think that was an accident either. So there's lots of things like that in The Joker, which makes, when you notice those things, it makes you appreciate the movie that much more. Are certain things, left open to interpretation? Sure. But sometimes there's just the angles, for which you want to shoot something, how they line up a shot. I mean, it's there. It's there, and it gets into your subconscious without you realizing it. Love that fucking shit. Okay, let me see here. We'll go for a little bit longer. Jason Wiley, Dave, for commentaries, I sent you a list of car movies on Facebook. Maybe you could cover them at some point. Car movies. Okay, I'll have to get my assistant to take a look at that and see where that Facebook message is. And if I have time today, I'll see if I can take a look for it as well. I'm still averaging like 30 messages a day on Facebook, which is just fucking unreal. I love it. I think it's awesome that you guys reach out to me that way, but it's just there's just so many that I have to pick and choose the ones I can respond to and get back to. And also know, if you want me to respond, it's always good to keep the messages shorter because that way it's easier to respond to. Sometimes, people will send me long messages and then ask a question at the end, and I just don't have the time. I just don't have time to do that. It's nothing personal. It's never personal. It's just it's a reality, right? If you were receiving that many messages a day, you can't possibly get back to everybody. Brandon Tess says, I'm thinking Joker will win 5 or 8 Oscars. 5 or 8. Not 5 or 6. 5 or 8. Brandon Test has spoken, ladies and gentlemen. ACDC 113089 says, let's go Blues. I was so happy that the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup last year. So happy. Somebody different. It was somebody different, man. It was somebody different. I was so happy. Let me see here. All right. We'll go for maybe another 5 minutes or so. Dookie Wilco says, hey, Dave, don't know if it's been asked, but what's your biggest Oscar snub? Saving Private Ryan for me. That was a huge snub. I gotta say, Steven Spielberg wins Best Director and Shakespeare in Love wins Best Picture. That was the Oscars in 1999 for the year 1998. That was definitely, I gotta say, I'll probably, oh, my mic is, there we go. I'll probably agree with you on that. Off the top of my head, yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. That's just was unbelievable. Let me see here. Vegas Courier says he was offered a cameo in Dr. Sleep, but turned it down. Who are you talking about? You must be talking to somebody. I'm not sure. I'll take your word for it, whoever you're talking about. Sergio Ribeiro says Dr. Sleep had abysmal writing. Abysmal writing. Abysmal writing. Sergio thought this when he went to see the movie.
Oh, fuck you, man. Come on.
That's what he thought, folks. That's what he thought. And maybe he's right. I've yet to see it. I got to see it. Louis Maldonado. I always get this. Maldonado. I think I'm saying that right. On a Greyhound on the way to Philly trying to catch up on the show. Cool. You're on a Greyhound. Where are you coming from? Lewis, you're on your way to Philadelphia. Where are you coming from? Let me see. The Badass Ninja says, my biggest Oscar snub is Lady Gaga not getting Best Actress. Chris has spoken. His biggest Oscar snub is Lady Gaga not getting Best Actress is the way it goes. All right, 5 more minutes. I did not miss any super chats, did I? I don't think I did. Let me just hang on. Let me go back. Dave, you gonna see Halloween Kills? That was the last one. Okay, good. Just making sure. Ohio, Columbus. Yes, Columbus, Ohio. Cool. On your way to Philly, the city of brotherly love. Yes, it is snowing here in Toronto. We've had a bit of snow over the last number of days, so it is. But you know what? For Toronto and for Canada, it actually has been a very mild winter for the vast majority of this winter. Our winters are usually from the beginning of December to about the end of March. It's been really mild. There's been a lot of green grass. There's been a lot of warm temperatures, not but I mean probably 30 degrees, 40, which is quite warm this time of year, and it's been kind of that's not bad, right? I think so. Anyway, I got to make sure I say that right, because obviously here in Canada, we're Celsius to Fahrenheit. All right, so if I say 32, no, that's all right. 40 degrees is 4 degrees Celsius. Yeah, of course, we had a couple of days that were 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 10 degrees Celsius. So I say most of the winter has actually been between 40 and 50 degrees. So it actually hasn't been that bad. But today I think it's -5. I think it's -5 Celsius, that is, folks. Don't lose your shit now. -5 Celsius is 23 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a little chilly here today. And the snow is coming down. Coming down. Eddie Green 101 sends in a super chat, says, another great show, Dave. I'll be in touch with you later today in regard to the podcast tomorrow. Yes, sounds good, Eddie. Looking forward to it, buddy. Looking forward to talking to Eddie Green tomorrow on his podcast. And that should be a lot of fun, Eddie. Really looking forward to that. Let me see here. Lauren Downing says, have a great weekend, Frank. Frank has taken off. You guys rock. Gotta go. 2 more minutes left for me. Let's see here. Let me see. Sergio Ribeiro says, once upon a time in Hollywood had an awesome and intense ending. Very satisfying to see what happened to the Manson family. Well, that's not exactly what happened to the Manson family. That isn't what happened to the Manson family, but that should have what happened to the Manson family. That's why he did that. It's satire, and he sort of rewrote history, but in a satirical way, to kind of, maybe have a version out there that, you son of a fucking bitch. Yeah, here's what should have happened. Here's what we would have loved to have done with you, in sort of a satirical way. But just so we're clear, now I'm sure you know that. You seem like a smart guy. I'm sure you know that. It was just the way you worded the question. But just so we do know that isn't what actually happened to the Manson family. That is what no doubt a lot of us feel should have happened to the Manson family, and Sharon Tate should have survived. Unfortunately, she didn't. Jonathan McCullough sends a super chat, says, Dave, what is your favorite Myers mask behind you? My favorite Myers mask behind me. The H1, the H1 sitting right there is just classic, but they're all great. They're all great. Chris Baber sent me the H2 and the 2018 mask there. That's an independent mask, by the way. That's not a Trick or Treat Studios mask. That's independent. The detail on that is phenomenal. If you go to my channel and you look at my little fan film, which was just an experimental small short to show off that mask. It's called The Boogeyman. Scroll down on my page where I have my Halloween fan film Halloween fan films playlist, and it's The Boogeyman. Click on that, and it's just, that's brilliant. Just one of my favorite renditions of that mask. So yeah, I would say them all. It's hard. It's like choosing your children, man. It's like choosing your children. It's so hard to do, man. So hard to do. Excuse me. Okay. I'll take, let me see here. Do we have any more coming in? I think we've been on now for an hour and 44 minutes, coming up to an hour and 45 minutes. I think this is about where I'm going to end it. yes, I think that will do it for me here. Looks to be a good spot to end. So that is going to do it for me here on episode 15 of McRae Live. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank you for watching and sharing your thoughts in the comment section. You guys are awesome. You guys are amazing. You know I love you guys. I want to thank all of you who sent in super chats, helping support the channel that way. It goes right back into the channel to keep these shows going and everything that we do here on the channel. So I definitely want to say thank you for that. And thank you to everybody who sent in your questions and your thoughts in regards to the Oscars and all that kind of jazz. Really appreciate that as well. I think you guys are awesome. You're rocking it. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy watching the Oscars on Sunday night. If you're not going to watch the Oscars on Sunday night, well, just have a good old fucking time doing whatever the hell you are going to be doing. You are going to be doing. It'll be awesome. Whatever you're doing, I'm sure it will be amazing. And I will be back on Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another episode of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit, where Tony Michael and I will be watching Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. I'll make the official announcement over the weekend. And I may or may not have a standalone video that I'll be shooting and uploading to this channel as well. We shall see. I think you guys are awesome, and that'll do it for me. So in the meantime and in between time, I will talk to you guys soon. Alrighty. There we go. That's better. I was too soon. Cheers.